Hello, everyone, and welcome to APQC's October KM webinar, Survive and Thrive with a KM Strategy to Drive Innovation. So we've been talking about this connection between KM and innovation for a while now, certainly a lot this year. And many of you have been asking for more insights and examples of what this looks like inside real organizations in the real world. So I think that this webinar is going to be a great option for all of you. We definitely do want your questions and comments, and you saw in the video at the beginning how to enter those in the chat and the Q&A. I think our speakers today are going to wait until the end of the presentation, and then we will address as many questions as possible. But please feel free to chat and interact there, and I'll try to jump in as well as we go along. So without further ado, I would like to introduce today's speakers. In the 9 years that I have known these two, there really is no better duo to talk about KM in its various incarnations. So I'm very excited to introduce Tamara Viles, who is Program Manager for Knowledge Management and Social Learning at TechnipFMC, and Kim Glover, who is Director of Knowledge Management and Social Learning for TechnipFMC. So thank you so much, Tamara and Kim, for being here, and I will pass things over to you.
All right, this is exciting. So I am going to share my screen and we're going to just get started. Let me know that you can see it, please.
We see you.
Awesome. So this is our agenda, but rather than spending any time to go through it, we're just going to jump right into our Take 5 moment. In our company, we start every meeting with a reminder of one or more of our core values and foundational beliefs. And we believe that KM supports all of them: safety, quality, integrity, sustainability, respect. We do it every day with our major solutions, which you see there from our intranet site, and which I'll also just go through the list quickly on the right. The Well is our enterprise moderated wiki where anyone can add content, but they get approved by moderators. The Bridge is our home for communities of practice in chartered networks. Experts Explain are our knowledge sharing webinars, which cover a variety of technical and business topics, and employees can attend in real time or view later, just like today's webinar. Illuminate is our podcast series. It helps us learn more about our people and our business. And then there's facilitated collaboration, which we'll be taking you through a lot of today. So just a quick overview of who we are. We're global, a leader in the energy industry with 2 large business segments and a growing focus on energy transition. We are in lots and lots of countries across the world, and you can see with this size and scope how important knowledge sharing is in our company, just as it is in your company. So we're going to transition now. I'm going to hand over to Tammy. But before I do that, I'm going to say that we've been working together for, 20 plus years, and we may be finishing each other's sentences and adding, and that's just perfectly normal for when we talk, and I hope it's okay with you. Take it away, Tammy. Tell us about KM and innovation.
Indeed, it's true. We love to have fun and we love to share this information with you. So innovate or die. Oh, it sounds so dramatic, doesn't it? But it's true. And sadly, there's plenty of evidence out there to prove it. It speaks to the core of competitive advantage. It can mean the difference between life or death for a company or a business unit. The environment in which we're all doing business begs for innovation. It's critical for business continuity and sustainability as we face several difficult and unprecedented challenges. First, the economic downturn. Now, this might be more meaningful to us in oil and gas than in other markets, but when times are rough, companies must innovate to stay afloat. They need to find new markets, develop new processes, maybe repurpose old products. And because the downturn affects the entire supply chain, maybe even repackage services or restructure licenses to accommodate struggling customers. Next, lean is always the right thing to do, right? But it's even more relevant today as continuous improvement and eliminating waste is required to accommodate the economy. And then there's the global pandemic. Ironically, it's forcing companies to be innovative because it's changing the way we work. An outcome of which means that employees are more agile and open to change. Conveniently, in times of ambiguity and uncertainty, innovation can prosper, in this case, out of necessity. This is the time to foster a culture of innovation. And lastly, complacency. It's not unique. In fact, I bet all of you on this call today can name 10 companies off the top of your head that are no longer in business because they chose not to innovate. Indeed, complacency with the status quo can bankrupt a company. Think of those that fought the digital revolution. There's Kodak, like there on the slide, but there's also Xerox, Borders Books, Polaroid, Blockbuster Movies, a host of others. They all chose not to go digital. And where are they today? Now, that's not going to happen to us because we're all innovators. And as knowledge practitioners, we know more about innovation than we think we do because they have more in common than not. Right, Kim?
Absolutely. And I'm going to take you through that. We've discovered that KM and innovation require many of the same cultural elements to be successful and to be universal across your company. And this slide lists some that we know to be true for both. So think communities of practice and innovation hubs as I quickly go through them. So agility and a collaborative environment that fosters innovation gives you that flexibility to test, to modify ideas as you get new input. And it doesn't have to be neatly formatted because capturing, sharing, and building on ideas is what's important. Communities of practice and innovation hubs bring people together to share those new ideas and troubleshoot and solve problems. Creativity is encouraged and collaboration is the rule. So when people from different disciplines works together, it's more efficient because each brings their different knowledge, their perspective, their capabilities to the table. And because of the variety, what could sometimes take 3 months to accomplish could actually be done in half that time. We're just more effective. And then diversity of thought and backgrounds also give us access to experience that we wouldn't have otherwise if we stuck in our own little silos. And those perspectives can help accelerate idea generation. They can help accelerate learning and problem solving and allow members to challenge ideas and the status quo in an organizationally, geographically, but psychologically safe space. Giving employees a safe to fail place to innovate and to ideate empowers them and lets them know that everyone has the ability to create. And so finally, that last one there, it's got to be accessible and reciprocal. The tools and the processes and the strategies have to be visible and available, just part of your organizational culture or your DNA, so to speak. And we've learned, haven't we, Tammy, that just because you build it does not mean they'll come. No, it does not mean that. In fact, we've talked about that before. So we have to have a great change management strategy to make sure that everything we put in place actually gets used by employees. Now, let's look at another thing that KM and innovation share, and that is barriers to adoption. So this is a list that I won't go through every one of them, but the list was actually developed more than 5 years ago when we brought some facilitated collaboration services to our fellows, and we asked them to ideate and to create a list of barriers to innovation. And this is their list. And we were really surprised when we looked at it later. Wow, those are exactly the same barriers that we face in knowledge management. So I would just ask you to look at it for a minute and think about your KM or your innovation initiative and think about which ones of these that you have faced. And then we'll move right along. So we're going to move now into how facilitated collaboration helps bridge and bring KM and innovation even closer together. And I'm going to hand it to you, Tammy.
Thank you so much. So because KM and innovation have so much in common, it's no surprise that there are tools that would apply to both. We call it facilitated collaboration, and it's a strong solution because it addresses several of the issues that we're facing in today's crazy world. First, It provides a structure for the unstructured ideation process in both small and large scale scenarios. And that structure permits you to take a deeper dive into key ideas and allow employees to build upon and challenge one another's suggestions to create what my former colleague used to call the bigger brain.
I think he learned that here at APQC, by the way.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me. Also, facilitated collaboration allows for rapid idea generation. You can collect a large number of ideas in a short amount of time from a knowledgeable crowd, and then collectively sort and categorize and assess those suggestions. And the process is engaging. Employees are empowered and enlightened, and they actively contribute and comment and vote on ideas. When employees participate in brainstorming sessions, they can see one another's contributions and are inspired to add their own. Occasionally, we've seen sessions even get competitive a little bit. Some employees have launched entire mini campaigns to get others to see their ideas and to gather votes. And that engagement, you just can't buy it. Next, facilitated collaboration also creates buy-in and acceptance because employees are invited into the process. In some cases, it can help inform the acceptance and desire stages of the ADKAR change management approach, which is really helpful for us. As Kim just said, change management is key. And finally, facilitated collaboration, it levels the playing field because it gives an equal voice to all participants, regardless of their role or their personality type or geography. And it provides for diverse collaboration from multiple perspectives in a large population. More often than not, we've found that winning ideas can come from very unlikely sources. Isn't that right, Kim?
That's right. It brings to mind what Dave Snowden calls the naive participant, and we really believe in that.
Yeah.
So let's tie it all together here. There's an old African proverb that we've quoted before, even here at APQC, that we really love, and it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we think you can go fast and far, and that's why we introduced facilitated collaboration as part of our KM initiative. And what we've learned beyond our expectations is that KM can empower innovation. There was a Harvard Business Review article that recently said, and I'm going to quote here, to be an innovator, you don't need a crystal ball, you need a wide angle lens. And right, and our employees can be that lens, and their ideas can deliver that advantage that innovation is seeking in a competitive market. So let's go into more details now.
Yeah, we've got two solutions in our facilitated collaboration portfolio that we use to crowdsource and in turn innovate. The first is called XLeap. XLeap is a virtual workshop platform where participants log into sessions and then collaboratively respond and react to a series of questions. The process can drive consensus and it goes by very quickly. The other is called Spigot. And that's an ideation platform where you ask the crowd a single question and then you just stand back and watch the magic happen. For example, you can present a problem for the crowd and then they respond with their ideas for the solution. Both applications contribute to all three of our company's core values: to realize possibilities by promoting collaboration and expediting ideation, achieving together through building consensus and fostering decision-making, and building trust by creating that transparency and enhancing engagement. Now, we'll discuss the process to deploy these tools in greater detail later. And before we do that, we'll talk about some use cases that show how we've used these tools to spur innovation in our company. But first, let's take a moment to stretch and rejuvenate our brains. Now, I'm sure you're probably wondering what I mean by that. Well, let me explain. Something we learned years ago from an APQC keynote speaker, a brain scientist by the name of Dr. John Medina. We learned that a brain can only process a limited amount of information at any given time. And so he recommended that every 10 or so minutes, we take a break and we enjoy what he called a dopamine lollipop. And that just restarts your brain and it enables it to process new information. So for this session, we'll be taking breaks and asking you to guess a couple of quotes about innovation. So get ready to post your answers in the chat. And tell me, which well-known inventor said, innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower? And your hint for this one is that most of you probably have one of his inventions in your pocket or your purse right now. Any guesses?
Tell me when you're ready, Tammy.
Bada-boom. Oh, it's coming in over and over. Okay, you guys are really good at this. Maybe I should have found more difficult innovators. Indeed, it's Steve Jobs. Brilliant.
All right. Are we ready for another one?
Just one more before we move on. How's that sound?
That sounds good to me.
For our next quote, who said, innovation is everyone's responsibility, not just R&D's? And your hint here is that he had some crazy hair. Oh, okay. Give your clues. This one might be a little bit more difficult, so let me give you one more. How about everything is relative with this invention? And there they come. Everyone's guessing Einstein. You're right. You know, they're not difficult, but you know, everybody just take a moment, breathe, give a stretch, and let's get back to it.
All right. So now we're going to dive into some use cases for you. And the first slide is a list of use cases that we have done. And we had to make this list shorter. We had it a lot longer, and we got some really good coaching to make it less, because it's a lot to take in. But this is a good time to tell you that we can have benchmarking and knowledge sharing sessions later. We're happy to share what we do and how we do it, and to learn from you as we're doing that sharing. So I'll say, while we're pausing just for another moment on this slide, that you can see that the business needs we support use facilitated collaboration and knowledge management and facilitation in general to solve a myriad, a wide variety of internal challenges. And it helps us bring value to the company, and it helps our internal customers understand who we are and what we do. And so the last thing I want to point out about these case studies as you look at them is that they affect our organization in many different areas, because innovation isn't just for R&D, although we love supporting our engineering and development community. It's all across the organization. You can innovate in finance, in HR, in legal, in learning. You can be innovative doing lots of stuff in your personal life, even cooking dinner, right? So we like to make sure that we spread the innovation and ideation magic across the whole company and all departments. So I'm going to move now over to a real use case for Tammy to take you through.
Indeed. Now, this first example shows how one challenge can lead to another and essentially support a large corporate objective. In this case, by reinforcing a cultural shift towards a lean methodology. Now, as we discussed earlier, lean is very popular right now as companies are looking to streamline operations, and our company is no exception. We release training around lean. Our group has hosted Experts Explain webinars and Illuminate podcasts on the topic to educate employees and infuse the company with a lean mindset. Both of these spigot challenges complemented those efforts. They were deployed to our HR organization, what we call our people and culture organization, which includes roughly 400 people around the globe. Now, the first challenge on the left asked employees what improvements could be implemented to make our processes, systems lean, effective, and smart. And then we followed up this challenge with the one on the right, where we asked HR employees to then submit their lean success stories and vote and comment on those submitted by others. Now, this second challenge reinforced the initial effort and gave us the opportunity to reward those who acted with that lean mindset that we introduced in the first challenge, and also to highlight the behaviors that we wanted employees to emulate. We're actually in the process right now of deploying that lean success story challenge for a second time, and the high response is giving us some insight into how effectively we're affecting that culture shift towards lean. So in this case, our ideation challenges have contributed to a greater change management strategy.
which is awesome. And something I'd like to point out here is that these images weren't created for this presentation. These images for each challenge were actually taken directly from those ideation challenges that Tammy delivered for our internal customers. And so we like to show real deliverables when we can. So the next case study is about product innovation. We've been called multiple times actually from different product managers, and it's become kind of a theme. The first one is my favorite because of the way it was expressed. The product manager basically just said, "I need a game changer. How can you help us make that happen?" He wanted to think differently about a product we've been going to the market with for over 30 years. And he wanted to surface all the crazy ideas across all of the people who worked on this product from, through the whole value chain. So you can see there that we got together more than 30 engineers. We found out or captured that they had more than 600 years of experience between them. And in 2.5 hours, we got 124 ideas. And we ended up going to market in a different way with that particular product. And that particular leader is a KM devotee who is always the first to raise his hand and dive in and join our conversations and use our new tools. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Tammy.
You betcha.
One new go-to-market strategy. There we go.
I'm so excited to present this slide because this challenge was one of my favorites because it truly demonstrated the power of our employees' expertise, and it acknowledged that anyone in our company can be an innovator. Let me explain what I mean by that. Our engineering group partnered with our sourcing and procurement team to invest good money on ideas to improve product design or to streamline the business. Now, initially, we thought leaders might take some exception to employees highlighting issues, but we were wrong. We had buy-in from the beginning and sponsorship cascaded through the leadership. Some managers even gamified the challenge by offering incentives of if the winning idea came from an employee in their division, and also to the manager of that winning employee. And it was so rewarding to witness. Now, we've learned through that employees are just experienced. They are the boots on the ground, and they understand what our company is capable of. And they have the visibility, imagination, and just experience to suggest profitable innovations. We received so many ideas that leaders extended the challenge for another month or two. And just the top 3 ideas alone have the potential to save our company millions. And management was not only impressed with the volume and creativity of the ideas and the variety of new perspectives, but also with the ability that the challenge had to strengthen the relationship and the collaboration efforts between these two formerly disparate groups. What you see on this slide is the Take 5 moment that was part of the communications and engagement plan that we developed to roll out that challenge, because it was a pretty large effort going out to well over 1,000 individuals. So thanks for letting me present that. One of my favorites.
Absolutely. And this is another good example about how facilitated collaboration can bridge the whole value stream. So you can see engineering working with global sourcing and procurement together to bring their perspectives to solve problems and make things more effective, efficient, fast, more innovative. So the next one is about the voice of the customer, because you can be innovative with long-standing practices like voice of the customer activities, right? We used our facilitated collaboration approaches and tools to launch a very holistic VOC approach, which you'll see here, with the goal in this particular case of creating an innovative plan for the next year's roadmap. So I'm going to walk you through this quickly. We deployed a survey, and we asked employees about their perspectives, and then we deploy an evaluation effort about that survey and update, do focus groups, and then take the leaders through focus groups and look at the gaps between what leaders think and what the survey that went out to a broader group think, to identify some key areas to focus on. And we're asking the same questions, but of these different audiences, and that really helps to put a lens on the whole size of the problem, if you will. While we did this, we also collected quantitative data across the business problem we were looking at, and then brought that back and looked at the whole thing in a workshop to evaluate what we can do to create that innovative go forward plan. And by collecting input from every corner, we were able to get innovative ideas to the surface and be considered in the go forward plan. This is a structure for voice of the customer that we've used more than once and found to be really, really successful, and also, again, to support innovations. This one's for you, Tammy.
Indeed. Our technical expertise program just launched last year, and there were so many people across multiple organizations and geography involved in its creation. But needless to say, bringing them all together in person was expensive and quite frankly impossible with the pandemic. So to expedite development, we relied on our facilitated collaboration tools. First, XLeap. It was perfect to brainstorm things like strategy, objectives, and governance. And more importantly, it was critical in gaining consensus and buy-in from our diverse working committees. The outputs were used to design the program and ensure related initiatives like STEM and inclusion and diversity, etc., were well represented in the technical expertise program. However, we also needed to create some buzz about this new initiative, so we used Spigot to have a naming contest. The challenge created excitement about how a group of subject matter experts would soon be available to consult and advise, and it gave some pre-launch recognition to the members who would be selected to the program.
So the name of this presentation has Survive and Thrive in it. And this is a really key strategy. Getting connected with our technical experts and our fellows has been a wonderful partnership for us. And speaking of partnership, we're partnering with talent management on this project to create that tiered program that recognizes our technical talent and also connects knowledge management and social learning directly to those experts. Helping them share their knowledge is a KM activity. Innovation and spreading that can be a KM activity, and KM and innovation again are a match made in heaven. So we have a little more for you, but before we go to that next section, it's time for another dopamine lollipop. And I think this might be a hard one.
No.
No? Okay.
I've got a good hint. So
Okay.
giving the brain a break, post in the chat the name of the inventor who said, "There's a better way to do it. Find it." And here's your clue. He could really light up a room.
How's it looking?
It's looking. These people are way too smart for my quotes. I don't know what I was thinking, but we're giving the brain a break, and that's all we're after here. I love the engagement, you guys. Thank you so much for responding. Let's go ahead and do one more, okay?
Well, I think your clues are too easy, Tammy.
Well, I really thought long and hard on how I could be clever. Apparently, I might have invested too much time in that activity. So our last one that we have for the presentation before we wrap it up is name the inventor that said, "I'm looking for a lot of men who have an infinite capacity to not know what can't be done." And your clue here is he was a driving force back in his day.
And today he would have hopefully said a lot of men and women.
Well, he probably should have said that back then. He just didn't know any better. And here, because either one of these gentlemen could have said it. We are getting an equal response between Ford and Tesla, and it was Ford. But I think both innovators could have said that quote because it would have been true on both parts.
Yes. So
thanks, guys.
Now we're going to move into our crowdsourcing process and tools, more of a deep dive. We've sort of given you some of the use cases, but we haven't really said how. So we're going to go into best practices in crowdsourcing ideation, which we've gathered over years and years from benchmarks and our own experience. And,
Before
I'll hand it to you, Tammy.
Thanks. Before we talk about the tool, let's best practices.
Yeah.
First, you'll want to provide guidelines, but not limitations, right? Meaning you don't want to constrain the ideation, but instead you do want to inform the crowd about the general goals you're trying to accomplish. For example, do you want to shorten delivery times? Are you looking to lower costs? Are you looking to improve processes? Just give guidelines, but don't constrain.
Okay, and then metrics. You have to establish metrics that you're going to use to analyze those ideas. And along with that, an idea life cycle that has the minimum criteria that an idea needs to graduate to the next stage. And I'm all excited because I had an idea, a team of us have an idea in the Lean Challenge that Tammy talked about earlier within People and Culture. And just the other day, I got a notification that it graduated to the next stage. So I know I met the minimum, we met the minimum criteria. We can also track activity metrics like the number of ideas submitted, the number of votes, the number of comments, the number of thumbs up, and use that to help gauge what's working and what doesn't work with each audience.
Indeed. And you'll also want ideas to be appended or challenged by others. So provide for the capability. This is how you scale the imagination and compound that idea generation.
And then the cross-functional teams point there is a repeat of something we said earlier. Just don't limit ideation to a single team. Peanut butter spread it as much as you can and get those naive and diverse perspectives.
Indeed. And then you'll want to leverage your existing KM tools to run your crowdsourcing activities. For example, use a community of practice to advertise and communicate about your challenge.
And then remember that the innovation and idea life cycle is going to be unique in each company. There's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
We learned when we were doing our benchmarking before, you've got to define and put in place something that is fit for your company's culture.
And be sure to reward the employees who participated in the crowdsourcing activity and recognize the winners. And the ideal life cycle does not end with selection. Rather, you want to create and communicate success stories that show how the ideas were actioned and help foster that culture of innovation at all levels. Also, you'll want to recruit managers to sponsor innovation sessions and coach them on crowdsourcing and how the process goes. For example, ask them to keep an open mind. They need to create that safe space and give permission to employees to call their product or process ugly. Sometimes that's hard for them to do. And also ask them to give those blue sky ideas as much consideration as they would to the easy to implement low-hanging fruit. That's usually how you tell the difference between a profitable innovation and a just needed but creative routine enhancement.
And then, maybe it sounds just so simple, but use a platform, find a tool, and it may not be the same ones we use. It's got to fit, again, your culture, but it's so much easier to use one or more tools to support innovation and ideation. And when we realized we had funds and budget, we didn't just pick the first thing. We called all of our benchmarking partners and asked them what they used, and it was a really useful exercise. So a tool is a very helpful thing.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting, Kim, that most of our knowledge management specialists are certified facilitators. Thank you, Kim. And as such, we are all trained to lead discussions and ensure that efficient exchange of knowledge. In fact, that's how we came up with the facilitated collaboration name. When you partner facilitation techniques with an objective-driven platform, well, you get facilitated collaboration.
And I know we're not the only KM team that knows that facilitation can be a gateway drug, if you will, to using all of the KM tools. Facilitation gives you a seat at the table to help you survive and thrive. So now we're going to dive into actually looking at a couple of the tools. The first one is XLeap, and you can see a couple of screenshots there at the top. That's our tool that we use for virtual ideation workshops. Although we usually use it synchronously, where everyone joins a session at the same time and does their ideation and builds on each other's ideas. We ask bunches of questions and then we'll allow the group to rate and rank and prioritize hundreds of ideas in a very short time. We can also use it asynchronously. Either way, we can work together to sort and categorize, and this really accelerates the collaboration. We can get done in just a couple of hours what has literally taken weeks before, because the process works. Now at the bottom there, you see a short set of pictures about the process. It always begins with a meeting with the sponsor to define the objectives. We have a list of the 6 Ps, which we learned in our facilitation training when we got certified. We have a dry run to make sure we can successfully execute what we've designed. And then once the session has been deployed, we circulate a report easily with just a single click. And then we have a debrief to do lessons learned, because we're KM people and that's what we do, right? So this is for, again, 20 to 30 people, maybe as few as 5, as many as 100, but it's not for large scale crowdsourcing. For that, we've added Spigot to our KM toolbox, and Tammy's going to talk about that.
Yeah, indeed. Spigot is a little bit different from XLEAP. Though I've conducted a single session in a 1-hour meeting, it's not uncommon for the process to take, 4 to 5 weeks, maybe even up to 2 months. And that's because it's a large scale ideation tool that can crowdsource thousands of people at once. Now, the tool is flexible and can adjust to your needs or requirements, but in general, the process is designed like a funnel where ideas meet defined criteria, and then they automatically graduate to the next level until in the end, you have a ranked order of ideas from number 1, 2, 3 to whenever. Now, like XLEAP, it begins with a consultation with the sponsor to define those requirements and their objectives, criteria, etc. And then we launch the initial crowdsourcing session. Participants submit their ideas and then they vote and comment on one another. And then those ideas that meet the criteria are evaluated and graduated to a pairwise activity that results in an ordered list of ideas. From there, the sponsors review the finalists and select those to implement. On the right there on your screen is a screenshot of the ideas that were collected in one of those lean challenges that we discussed earlier.
So Tammy's right. These challenges can be really, really large. And in fact, our first one, mid-year in 2018, had over 9,000 people. It was truly exciting, and each one of them remains truly exciting. And this is something I should have said earlier. We're talking about the tools that we use, but we need to make it clear we don't get any kind of refund or kickback or anything. And there are lots of really good tools out there. These are just the tools that we use, and we invite you to do your own benchmarking.
Yeah, absolutely. And to segue further, Kim,
yes,
go ahead and click. XLEAP and Spigot, they're nice. We love them, but we would be so remiss if we had a conversation about KM and innovation and we didn't include the tried and true and sometimes terrifically messy place to stimulate innovation. And that's our communities of practice. These safe to fail spaces are comprised of people from varied backgrounds, geographies, and all levels of experience, who expect and appreciate innovative discourse. In fact, most of our communities, well, it's expected. Together, those members brainstorm, they innovate, they troubleshoot, and by nature, they challenge and they test and they build on ideas presented in those discussions. Our communities were our original innovation tool, and they still serve that purpose today. But in addition, several of them now are some of the biggest users of XLEAP and Spigot because leadership appreciates the structure that those tools bring to the process. And we use those communities to advertise challenge. So it's a win-win because employees understand that their vote matters and all ideas are welcome.
So talking about communities of practice reminds me of one of my favorite Carla Odell quotes, although I have literally dozens of them. And she said during the downturn prior to this current downturn, when you're under siege, protect the base. And in her opinion, communities of practice are the base for KM. And that just is so true and has been a survive and thrive tactic for us as well. So we're moving now into key takeaways, and then we get to interact with all of your questions, which is always the most fun part. Our key takeaways, hopefully you felt them as we discussed them. They are about KM and innovation being siblings. and sharing a lot of cultural elements that can be brought more closely together through support from the KM team and innovative collaboration strategies. Facilitation skills are key and can really help shoehorn the KM team into innovation initiatives across the whole company. And then finally, one size doesn't fit all with collaboration, with strategies, with tools, with the way you approach it. And we encourage you to pick the ones that work best for you. So with that, we're going to stop sharing, hand it back to our wonderful moderators at APQC, and look at all your questions.
Okay, wonderful. 1 second.
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much for a fantastic presentation. I always love hearing from you all. So it looks like we've got a couple of questions that have come in, and I'm sure a few more will roll in as people start getting their brains going. So the first one came in really at the very beginning when you were doing the Take 5, and it's about the well and bridge and KM pursuits, and are they branded the same throughout your company? Our organization has infinite names for the same activity, so I love the idea of standardizing on the naming. So I just wanted to ask you to talk a little bit more about the branding and how you think about that.
That's a great question. Yeah. And we work closely with our internal brand experts. And what they said about our branding is that they are part of the brand family of learning and knowledge management. So we don't have a slide up anymore, but you may have noticed when I showed the tools that all of the KM tools have the same look and some version of a play button shape within them, which is consistent with our learning management system, which also has a play button. So they're branded in a family way, but they're not exactly the same. We do actually have lots of materials though where we show the flow from competencies up through the learning management system, and then the major KM tools like the Bridge and the Well, the communities of practice, and the wiki, and how they are all supported by the facilitated collaboration services, as well as the events like the Illuminate podcast and the Experts Explain webinar series. I hope that answered the question.
I definitely think so. So we had a couple of questions, one in the chat and one in the Q&A, to ask you if you could talk a little bit more about the facilitator certification that you've done, where it is, and how you got that done. I think there's a lot of interest in that aspect and how that could help people in KM.
That's great. And I'll answer that question and then ask Tammy to give a 30-second from the participation standpoint, what it's done for her. But I'll answer it first. We used a company called Leadership Strategies. They provide facilitation training. You can go there and get it. You can have one of their people come on your site, which is what we did. I think we did a 4-day session. It was marvelous. They also have a book for sale that is about their facilitation approaches, and they have a website. And again, we don't have any, we get no kickback or anything like that, but that is how we went about it. And Tammy, what were your takeaways from being a participant in those training sessions?
Oh, I really appreciated it because I thought I could facilitate. Took the course and realized really no, I didn't know what I was doing. The strategies, the tips and tricks that they get you to understand and implement during a session are just key. Understanding how to handle different types of participants to ensure everybody has an equal voice and representation in a meeting. And Kim, you can back me up here. Our facilitation techniques, now that we, are well known for doing it, are in demand across the organization. It really is a gateway drug, and you really have to be careful not that it distracts from our initiatives, that core you spoke about earlier.
That's true.
Well, I'm going to jump in with one of the questions that I have. There's a few more in queue, but that is a perfect segue, because I feel like when we talk about knowledge management cozying up to something like innovation, it also happens when it cozies up to digital transformation. that there is a possibility of the base, the core of knowledge management getting lost and losing a little bit of its identity, or certainly in the eyes of users and how you market and promote that. So I was wondering if you would talk a little bit about how you think about that and making sure that people understand that knowledge management isn't just facilitated collaboration, that there are other aspects of it as you talk about it and provide these great services that allow the organization to innovate.
Thank you. I'll go first and then maybe ask Tammy to give an example. One of the things we do is annually look at our portfolio, and we're doing that right now for 2022, and talk about as a team what's working well, what challenges we have, what we need to stop doing, what we need to start doing, and what trends are happening that may impact our ability to deliver on the vision. In fact, we've talked about that at APQC, how to reinvent your KM team. Another thing that we do is not deliver transactional deliverables. So for instance, Tammy can give you a great example with finance or some other group. When we're asked to do an Experts Explain or an Illuminate podcast, or to show people how to create a series of wiki pages so they can have a hub, or there's a new community of practice, we make sure that we bring them the whole portfolio and say, we're not just here to, help you run this webinar or to run this ideation challenge. What are your business challenges? Where can we support with change management and knowledge sharing? Let's design an overall campaign. Tammy just led a huge meeting this morning with a bunch of engineers where they are working on a marvelous new lean methodology, and it was very holistic in terms of what was put together to support them. So I'll hand it to you now, Tammy, so you can, from the perspective of someone who's actually creating these things, maybe give another example.
Absolutely. I'd add on to that. First of all, that, we are a sponsored program and we have a very strong brand that's been around for more than 10 years. And we connotate trust in that brand. And we always market, our solutions, and we come out every single customer as a consultant, not as a KM specialist. So when finance came to me and said, we have this new process we need to roll out to all 20,000 people around the world in 42 countries, how do I do it? I took down the requirements and created a proposal that was an integrated solution. It was a change management strategy that really touched upon our entire portfolio of services and products that we offer in KM, and then went back to them. I partnered with them and together we executed. So that's, some of the ways that we make sure that our core competencies in KM don't get lost in those other external or ancillary conversations.
And then just one more thing to add, I would be remiss if I left out that we're really trying to do what really all KM organizations are trying to do. We're trying to help our company be a true learning organization. Mm-hmm. And so we partner with our colleagues in learning, we're in the same group, to bring that holistic approach to bear. And the two examples we just talked about, the new methodology for engineering and the new approach for finance or new process, both of them included connection with the learning modules.
I think one of the things that your program has always done very well is to be that consultative model to go in and identify those problems. So I think that this next question may ask you to rewind a little bit from the very mature place that you're in now to ask, what were some of the challenges that you had to overcome at the beginning of your KM program, and how did you overcome them and get to this place where you're able to go in and facilitate and solve business problems at the level that you do?
So I've been going first every time. Tammy, are you okay with that, or would you like to take the first one on this?
Oh, I don't care. You're the boss.
Huh?
I'll be glad to go first. I think we started with our core. We started with what is base KM, and we started with our communities of practice. We had our communities of practice in development and live for about 2 years when we realized that we had tons of discussions taking place that needed to be documented. So up came the well. So it was a gradual need among our employees, our knowledge sharing and consumption needs that defined our path forward. Challenges, I was the original owner of the well, and yeah, I had a hard time selling it. People were like, well, I'm not going to share my knowledge. I'm more important if I keep it inside, or I'm not going to create pages. This is not a wiki. I have my own tools. I mean, I could go on with a laundry list of excuses that I received when I rolled the well out. But we slowly but surely came up with several different tactics to conquer every single one. And once we got traction, we reached that tipping point where I couldn't handle all the requests anymore. So if you want a deeper dive in how to launch something, we're available. Please reach out to us. We are huge, benchmarking partners. We love to share our information and demonstrate our products and tools. So Kim, I'll hand off to you. I do go on.
No, it was great. And I would add to that, I think one of the challenges that we face in oil and gas, and many of you will face in your industries, which may be regulated, is the regulation of content, the audit trails that you have to have. And it's obvious in an industry like ours, with the opportunities to support our customers, also bring with them safety and quality expectations that we must never fail on. And so that was one of the initial challenges that was faced when our company rolled out KM, is how can we be sure that employees can trust that the content is accurate? I mean, anyone can create a wiki page, and what if people are chatting about things in the communities of practice and they're wrong? And so the governance was designed to meet that challenge head on. All of the wiki pages are reviewed or looked at by a moderator first, who then assigns a subject matter expert who clicks, yes, this can be trusted, and approves. If someone edits it, it comes back around and has to be approved. The communities of practice have strong governance in which leaders in each of the areas for those communities are involved. They're on the leadership team, and we welcome if wrong information gets in there, because we have an opportunity for the SMEs and the leadership team to publicly say what the correct answer is, but also for them to know that there is the wrong answer out there, and to understand we've got to dive more into this topic and make sure our employees understand details about A, B, C, or D. I would say that trustability of content and what people are going to do with what they learn is a big challenge for KM groups as they start to launch a program.
Kim, if I could just trigger you, we're talking about challenges. The opposite of that is opportunities. And you have like ESP in aligning with corporate objectives and following the market and supplying a service when it's necessary. I'm thinking optimized virtual work, the menu of services following mergers and divestitures, etc. So staying in tune with what matters most in the company keeps KM relevant and in demand.
Absolutely. To paraphrase, what is on top of mind for our leaders should fascinate us in KM, and we should figure out a way to help them, to support whatever it is that is top on their list.
So, Kim, I think it was you who said this. I have just a clarification question. Someone wrote in to ask what you meant by saying that you're a sponsored program.
It was Tammy who said it, but I will go ahead and answer it. We have executive sponsors for our KM initiative, and always have since the very beginning. It has been the CTO, and lately, of late, at least the last 3 years, the Senior VP of HR has co-sponsored. And that is a really wonderful opportunity to stay connected to the business on the technical side and the people side, and for them to give us quarterly guidance, and for us to report to them and say, this is what's going on, where can we do better? Where would you like us to get more involved? And it is that sponsorship that leads to, when we raise our hand for something like supporting the technical expertise program and our fellows, to just easily getting that assignment. And so that's what it means. And I would say I have never been good at steering committees. And Lauren, you ran a session at one of the APQC conferences about it and gave me a little more confidence. But if you don't have a steering committee, perhaps seek one or a set of sponsors who are very senior and who see the value.
I think that's great advice. So while you all were talking about governance, we had a question come in that's really about redundant, outdated, trivial material. We have a lot of information on our knowledge tool, but it's not well structured. It's often out of date, repetitive, hard to find. What suggestions do you have for bringing this source under control? $1 million question, right?
I can speak,
Go
which
ahead.
is, as a knowledge base, that's where you're going to find a lot of that unstructured or outdated material. And I'd say key is ownership. We don't own, we just facilitate the exchange of knowledge. So we make sure that we have owners who we call moderators that moderate that content. And we've taken the group of moderators and the leadership from our communities of practice and created a separate community of practice, a champions program, if you will, where we treat them a little special. We give them inside information. We let them contribute suggestions for updates and enhancements. In return, we expect them to act responsibly, to monitor the content they're sharing, and then we will launch centralized updating projects where we'll bring everyone together and we'll develop some processes and the mechanism by which we can do a cleaning house. It doesn't hurt that we migrate our stuff about every 2 years, and that's really helpful because we do a clean out when we do that as well. But ownership, I think, is key. Do you agree, Kim?
I do agree. And if you really need to, you can also just launch a huge project and distribute the work. But at our former company, we had a project to eliminate redundant, outdated, and trivial content, and we called it Keep Sherlock Current. Sherlock was the name of the internet, and we empowered that group of champions to run their own activities on their own content and distribute that work. And we gamified it a little bit and had some competition, and we got rid of a lot of rot, and we created more pride along the champion community and more trust that when you searched, what you found would be not redundant, outdated, or trivial, but meaningful.
Yeah, and just really quickly, because I know we're running short of time, but when we migrate, we always come up with a set of like 5 or 6 bullets, and it's just guidance on what migrates. If something hasn't been touched in 6 months to maybe a year, maybe it shouldn't migrate. If it doesn't have an owner, the owner is no longer here, maybe it shouldn't migrate. If it has old branding or old maybe it shouldn't migrate. After we migrate, we immediately find out what we missed. And more often than not, nobody speaks up, and that's how we know we made the right decisions.
Be bold. I think that's always good advice about archiving.
Yeah.
So I know that we are about at time. We've got a couple more questions. Maybe we can address those offline or in some fun way, but I want to make sure I have time to thank you, Kim and Tammy, for a great presentation, really useful, helpful advice. We have a few more links to resources on this intersection between KM and innovation in APQC's resource library. And we've got all of your contact information. I know you all are very generous about helping people out if they have questions or want further information about anything. And I hope that you all will join us next month for November's webinar. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.